following program contains mature themes on a thematic subject. Viewer discretion is strictly advised. State of the Nation is an opinion-based program. The thoughts and opinions shared within this program are not intended to offend or disregard anyone's perspectives or beliefs. We aim to foster open dialogue, encourage critical thinking, and explore thought-provoking subjects. Recognizing the importance of diversity and inclusion, this program welcomes all viewpoints and cherishes the right to express them freely. This program also contains the opinions of the participants and does not reflect the views and beliefs of the Derana Media Network. The network believes in a safe space for all ideas to be expressed and on its duty to create such a platform for free speech. Viewer discretion is strictly advised.
Good evening. Tonight, real independence and the Sri Lankan version of independence. Once again, pomp and pageantry, and once again we did it under the cloud we somehow learned to live with. An economy in limbo, a nation rebuilding again, and a country still divided, not just on the street, but inside people's minds. Now, while we replay the same Independence Day routine, the world is moving fast. Power is shifting, trade is shifting, technology is rewriting everything. So here's the real question for you and me. Are we changing with the world, or are we just changing the decorations and calling it progress? For insights, analysis and opinions, tonight I'll speak to former Minister of Justice Ali Sabry, Head of CEB Transformation Task Force Pubudu Niroshan Hedigalla, Energy Expert Dr. Vidhura Ralapanawa, Deputy Head of Academic Affairs at the Bandaranayake Academy of Leadership and Public Policy Dr. Anuradha Rodrigo, and researcher at Tricontinental Institute for Social Research, political economist Shiran Illanperuma. Good evening, I'm Mahieash Johnney, and this is the State of the Nation. Good evening once again, and thank you for spending this time with us. Sri Lanka's political and economic landscape is shifting fast, and you and I are here to get into what really matters to you properly, in depth. But first, last week we celebrated the 78th Independence Day. The pomp and pageantry came back, flags, parades, the bands, and of course the speeches. And it reminded us of a real struggle back 78 years ago. Sri Lankans stood together against an empire and won political freedom. Back then, taking a country was straightforward. You just invade it. Ships, soldiers, firepower, and a few bribes to the right insiders. Then you pit one group against another, secure the trade routes, and the country is all yours. And before we act like only the British did this, our own history shows power politics too. Our ancient kingdoms also intervened beyond this. Island King Parakramabahu era is recorded with overseas involvement and campaigns into South India. If my history memory serves me right, he sent troops across the Andaman Sea to Myanmar in order to dethrone then King of Bagan, basically Myanmar or Burma back then. So nobody was innocent. Power was power. But now invasion and conquest has upgraded itself. Today you do not need boots on the ground to own a country. Today you do it very cleverly. You use leverage, debt, dependency, deals wrapped in nice language, and local voices paid to sell it to you and me as national interest. And the ugliest modern version You do not even need an official army. You first find a local issue or a setback that nation has currently undergoing, and then push all camps to fight against each other. Just noise, no solutions. Then when it's at a fever pitch, light a match. Sometimes instability is exploited. And once a country is distracted, the real backdoor deals happens quietly. Minerals, metals, gems, ports, lands, roads, food contracts, everything is at play. Business of chaos. Does that sound familiar? No, I'm not saying that this happened to Sri Lanka. Absolutely not. England hemunat Lanka වෙන්නේ. I'm not going to insult your intelligence because surely I know you can think. You have eyes. You have a memory. So here's the lesson after Independence Day. Our biggest danger is not always invasion. It is invitation. Not always force. Sometimes it is our weaknesses, our short-term thinking, our habit of renting out the country one crisis at a time. Independence is not a ceremony. Independence is a standard. A nation is truly free only when its people cannot be bought cheap, not by foreigners, not by local big men, not by fear, not by slogans, not by this side versus that side drama, while the real deals get signed quietly. If you and I are easy to fool, Sri Lanka will always be easy to own. The day citizens stop being for sale, that is the day the country becomes independent for real. We'll be back. Welcome back everyone to the State of the Nation. Now in our lead story tonight, the numbers game. President Anuradha Dissanayake spoke on Independence Day, and one part genuinely made me pause. He basically said, people fight for themselves, that's normal. But when someone is willing to give their life for the country and the next generation, that's a different level of sacrifice. These are his exact words, and I quote, "We face different phases in life. Many people struggle for themselves, and that is natural. However, when someone fights while sacrificing their own life for the motherland and for the future generations, there is no denying that they truly become heroic patriots." And you and I know this. A country doesn't exist because of speeches or flags or parades. A country exists because people pay the price so the rest of us can live a little safer, especially our heroic soldiers. So yes, it's good to hear that kind of respect being said out loud by our current head of state. But then comes the uncomfortable part, because respecting sacrifice is not as same as fixing the country. And right now, people are not struggling with patriotism. People are struggling with monthly bills. The grocery bag, the school expenses, transportation costs, taxes, rents, electricity bills, food costs, the daily pressure. Now, I'm not saying this government has not done anything. Some things people are seeing in a positive light, including some parts of the education reform stock and other legislation that the government has passed to law. But the big question is still hanging there. Will this government push as hard to reduce the cost of living as it pushes to go after alleged wrongdoers from the past? Because accountability matters, but so does survival. The president also said economic freedom is the real freedom. Fair point. So the real test is simple. Are we moving towards that in real life or only in nice sentences? Last week, you and I went deep into the growth numbers and we saw different institutions giving different numbers. That's exactly why we can't just worship the headline. We have to look at the assumptions underneath. And we even had the Deputy Minister of Finance, Dr. Anil Chantha Fernando, on this program where he said the plan to push towards the 7% growth is still on. And they're working for it. Watch.
As of now, the medium-term growth, as that was explained in the budget speech by His Excellency Anuradha Dissanayake, we target an inclusive and sustainable growth of more than 7%. That target has not changed. As of now, we are moving on the same trajectory to achieve this particular target in the medium term.
Now, last week, another local think tank, Verite Research, basically came out and said, hold on, slow down, hold the phone, hold your horses, hold on to whatever you have at home. Well, they're saying the government's income forecast is also not lining up because the numbers don't match. Now, just keep this in your head while you listen. Verite often reads the economy through the same kind of lens the IMF and the World Bank use. That matters because the framework you use shapes the conclusions that you reach. But here's the thing. In this case, the World Bank and IMF are mostly talking about growth. Verite is talking about something else, the government's own revenue math. And they're saying the budget speech story and the actual budget reality are not matching. So yes, two different things. Kind of, but also not really. Because when your budget targets don't add up, it can end up spilling into growth directly or indirectly. Don't worry, in a bit I'll bring an economist in who will break down the difference properly for you. Now, if this was just a back and forth between academics, you and I honestly won't give a raccoon's behind. We don't live inside spreadsheets. We live inside grocery bills. So the reason I'm bringing this up again tonight is simple. If the government is right, you and I spend less, we save more, life gets a little better. But if the assumptions are off, you and I pay for it through higher taxes, higher bills, or the classic Sri Lankan combo, both. And that's where the concern should kick in tonight for you and me. Are we looking at realistic numbers, or are we once again letting emotions and loyalty do the accounting for us? Let's bring in political economist and researcher at Tricontinental Institute for Social Research, Shiran Illanperuma, to the conversation. Thank you so much, Shiran, for taking the time. First of all, what's going on here in terms of Sri Lanka's economy? I know no one can guarantee outcomes, but indicators can tell us what to prepare for. Now, everything was smooth, right, since 2020. I mean, kind of a smooth, right? And we made some progress last year, for sure. But then Ditwa shook us a bit in terms of these numbers. Now, Shiran, help us to understand as to what's going on, especially the difference of what the World Bank and the IMF versus what Verite is saying.
Hi Mahieash, first of all, thanks for having me on the show again. Always happy to be here and discuss things with you. Just a little correction. I mean, to be fair, it wasn't really a smooth ride from 2022 to now, right? With the reforms that have come with the IMF, you've had a significant amount of the population affected. You've had people unable to afford electricity, you've had taxes go up, costs of living go up, costs of utilities go up. A significant portion of the population remains in extreme poverty, right? We are experiencing higher poverty levels than we had experienced before the crisis of 2022. So things haven't been a smooth ride. What has actually happened is that inflation levels have kind of flattened for now, but people's incomes have not risen to match that. As to the rest of your question, look, World Bank and the IMF are both saying that Sri Lanka's growth is not going to be as high as anticipated, right, in the coming year. And in a sense, this is accurate from a global perspective. If you look at the IMF's growth forecast globally in the next year, 2027 and 2028, growth is going to be muted, right? This is for various reasons. We've been in a very long recession since 2008, the global financial crisis. We still haven't really come out of it. So Sri Lanka is part of this global scenario, right? We can't look at Sri Lanka in isolation. Obviously, the effects of Ditwa are going to be quite bad, quite difficult to deal with, and it's going to be difficult in particular to mobilize investment, not just to rebuild to where we were before, but if you really want to have growth, you need to have investment to rebuild above and over the capital stock that we had, right? So recovery from Ditwa just means rebuilding the capital stock that we have, but we want to actually accumulate capital beyond that to have investment in new industries and so on. And that's something we don't see. As for all of these other projections, there's a lot of talk, obviously, about tax revenue and so on and so forth. Look, there's only so much you can tax an economy before it starts to shrink. And if due to the global scenario, economic growth is going to be slow, right? That means your top line GDP growth is going to be slow, then the actual potentiality for tax revenue is also going to be lower because there's less economic activity. Your actual tax base is also going to be lower. So these are significant macro dynamics, international economic dynamics that we need to take into consideration.
Absolutely understood. Now let's talk about the government's revenue collection. Really good year in 2025, and now the IMF seems to be talking about more targets and rigid rules this year. Do you think it's feasible with the daunting task of rebuilding?
A very interesting question, and a question I hear quite often. I think I'll answer in the way I've always answered this question. In 2022, we defaulted on our external debt, right? We've basically been borrowing commercially, right, from private bondholders and so on for a very long time. We accumulated a significant amount of external debt to fund our domestic budget deficit, which was a deadly cocktail. External debt, particularly from commercial sources, often comes at much higher interest rates, often much more volatile, much less transparent, and much harder to renegotiate than multilateral and bilateral debt, right? So the IMF largely is concerned about the fiscal situation, about the domestic budget, right? That's your expenditure and your revenue in rupee terms. But if we're looking at long-term debt sustainability, particularly on the external side, really the metrics we should be looking at are quite different. We should be looking at foreign currency inflows. We should be looking at exports, right? We should be looking at how that sector is doing. And frankly, I don't see much room for optimism in that scenario. And there's many reasons for that. We can probably talk about that too. I mean, the global scenario is changing. Sri Lanka is locked into Western markets for demand through our garment sector, through our classic sort of colonial export economy. We have tea, rubber and coconut, and all we've added on top of that is apparel. So we're locked into Western markets at a time when the West is moving towards higher tariffs, more mercantilism, at a time when there's a crisis of consumption and demand even in those Western economies, right? So the question about Sri Lanka's exports, how we're going to get foreign currency to actually pay back our external debts, that remains an open question, and we're yet to see a real comprehensive strategy to deal with that issue.
Shiran, let's talk about a little bit about the world. Now, what kind of outer shocks must we be in the lookout for? Especially trade routes are now being rewired, global politics is becoming dicey. What must the government keep in mind?
Excellent question. I mean, this year started with a bang, quite literally, right? With the Trump administration's basically incursion into Venezuela, the illegal kidnapping of the president. That has kind of set the stage, the tone for the rest of the year. I think the US has basically shown that it's willing to violate all kinds of international laws. It's willing to weaponize the international trade system. It's willing to weaponize the international financial system to get what it wants, right? There is no longer any pretense of a rules-based order. Now, as I mentioned earlier, Sri Lanka is in a very fragile situation in this scenario, right? Since 1977 and the opening up of the economy, we've been dealing with this basic international social contract, this understanding that we would export to Western markets and we would accept foreign investment from Western markets in order to develop. But that contract is under severe threat right now. It's not immediately clear that that path of development is still available to us, right? Our dependency on Western markets is actually, it's actually a liability, right? It's a liability in terms of economic sovereignty. It's a liability in terms of national security. We've seen the US weaponize tariffs against India, against Brazil, and really trying to disrupt what appeared to be a kind of new mood in the global south, what appeared to be a move towards a new multilateralism and regionalism and so on. And you got to hand it to the guy. I think, you know, this round probably goes to the Trump administration. As for Sri Lanka, Sri Lanka really needs to be looking at de-risking from its exposure to the US and Western markets. It needs to be looking at diversifying its trade and investment partners, right? We do have to look east, we do have to look towards regionalism, but more importantly, we do need to be looking at a certain level of economic sovereignty, a certain level of, let's say, self-reliance, so that we can weather these kinds of external shocks, right? Whether it's in terms of food self-sufficiency, whether it's in terms of energy self-sufficiency. Those are the aspects that this Sri Lankan government, and frankly any Sri Lankan government, needs to be looking as we move ahead, because as you said, it's a very, very turbulent period and it's not clear which way things are going to go.
Indeed, let's leave it at that. Political economist and researcher at Tricontinental Institute for Social Research, Shiran. Thank you so much. A break now. This is the State of the Nation. Back in a moment. Welcome back everyone to the State of the Nation. Last week we heard the Ceylon Electricity Board has reached what they're calling the final phase of its restructuring. The CEB Transformation Task Force says the big planning pieces are now done. The basic assignment plan, the annual power procurement plan, the long-term generation plan and the long-term transmission development plan all has been completed. Now here's the part that hits real life. The staff changes are also kicking in as well. Over 2,100 CEB employees have opted for voluntary retirement and they'll be leaving soon. The total workforce right now is roughly around 22,000. So 2,000 leaves, around 18,000. That's the number that they will be bringing it down to. With thousands leaving and the workforce being cut down, can the CEB actually become more efficient like they're promising? And the bigger question for you and me is even simpler. Does this push our electricity bills down, or are we just watching another reform where the cost gets passed back to you and me? Joining me now is the head of the CEB Transformation Task Force, Pubudu Niroshan Hedigalla. Thank you very much, Mr. Hedigalla, for taking the time to join the program. Now, by the end of this month, when you officially announce the CEB liquidation, which specific new entities will legally take over generation, transmission and distribution from the very next day?
Mahieash, we have already incorporated 6 companies. Now all the generation, transmission, distribution and the system control functioned by CEB will be transferred to these 6 companies. Namely, Electricity Generation Lanka Private Limited will be doing the generation part of the CEB. NTNSP, National Transmission Network Service Provider Private Limited, will be taking over the transmission segment of the CEB. Then accordingly, Electricity Distribution Lanka Private Limited will take over the distribution segment of the CEB. Then National System Operator Private Limited will take over the dispatch, system control and the procurement of electricity. Then there are 2 residual companies, Energy Ventures Lanka Private Limited, then CB employees, they have their own provident fund and pension fund. These two funds will be transferred to the sixth company, that is called CB Employees Funds Private Limited. All these companies are already incorporated. Now the parallel operation is on after the repealing of the CB Act, which is called the appointed date. On that day onwards, these 6 companies will operate independently in the electricity market.
Understood. Now, Mr. Hedigalla, under the new national electricity tariff policy, I think it's due by the 3rd week of this month. What is the earliest month this year that households should realistically expect their electricity bill to change, either for good or bad?
Well, this policy is a new policy. For the clarity, we can say by mid-February, one submission is pending from CEB for the existing tariff revision. That tariff revision proposal by CEB will go on the existing methodology. The new policy, which is under the discussion, that is part of the national energy policy, that is part of a national electricity policy. That new national electricity tariff policy will take little time to get whatever the elements discussed within the policy to be implemented on the ground. For example, to get continuous improvement in the electricity bill, not just to lower the tariff, just to get an affordable tariff to each and every consumer sector, not only domestic, commercial, industries. We need to improve our lifestyle of the people, and same time we have to get a good stakeholder contribution from the electricity sector to the economic sector. Always we are considering stakeholder consultation into the electricity sector. What we need, some good contribution from the electricity sector to the economy, right? What is lagging all over the decades. To get that thing, we need an affordable tariff to each and every consumer segment. Let's say we have to get the generation cost down. We have to improve the transmission losses. We have to limit that one to acceptable levels. And we need investment into the distribution segment to get our consumer base and the system smart. To do that things, we need investment on T&D as well. At same time, we have to get the generation cost down. For those implementation processes, we need a time. But for the consumers, you will get the benefit from this new policy within this year. Let's say the first ever submission through the new successor companies will be submitted within June, July this year. So we can expect a good submission from these successor companies to get all these 2 main objectives done within coming years.
Indeed, Mr. Hedigalla, I'm a bit curious about the workforce layouts. Now, for the 2,153, I think that is the exact number, employees approved for voluntary retirement, on what exact date will the compensation payment be released for these voluntary retired individuals? And more importantly, can the newly formed entities carry out the same or more demanding work with a less cadre?
There will be no gaps. There will be no gaps for sure. Just after the appointed date, all these employees accepted VRS will get their compensation package. Let's say within March this year, they will get their compensation. Then what we have to focus, we have to optimize this cadre, yes, true, but same time for the higher rankers, from managers to the upper levels, there is a limitation in the labor force as well. So we have identified all these functions under 4 main wings: operations, technology, finance and HR. Under these 4 main wings, we need new talent, new thinking to the all these mainly 4 successor companies, even though including 2 residual companies. But we need the new thinking, the talent to absorb by the successor companies. In that point, there will be some addition to the labor, at the higher rankers, but same time with the improvement of the smart systems and cultural change, with a kind of a change management, some lower level grades we had to take their strength and the workforce, the deliveries to some kind of a to the middle and upper levels. In these segments we might see a kind of a curtailment of the labor force, but it is not about the numbers. We have to improve the quality of the labor, not the numbers.
All right, let's leave it at that. That was the head of the CB Transformation Task Force, Pubudu Niroshan Hedigalla. Thank you very much. Well, you and I love the idea of renewable energy, clean power, less dependence, less pollution, and honestly fewer excuses. So there's some good news on that front. Cabinet has approved the Renewable Energy Resources Development Plan for 2025 to 2030. The promise is big. 70% renewable energy electricity by 2030. Carbon neutrality by 2050. Now, on paper, it sounds like we're finally thinking long term. They're talking about priorities, prioritize land, renewable energy parks, a national resources map, even floating solar farms. All good, all modern, all the right buzzwords. But you and I know Sri Lanka's real weakness is not printing plans, it's converting those printed plans into real world results. Let's bring in energy expert Dr. Vidhura Ralapanawa. Thank you very much, Doctor, for your time. Good to see you once again. Thank you for being here. Now, based on what has been published so far, do you agree that Sri Lanka can realistically reach 70% of national electricity demand from renewable energy by, I think it's by 2030 under this plan? Yes or no?
The short answer is no. It's not because we cannot reach 70% renewables in Sri Lanka by 2030, but this plan is not really a renewable energy development plan. It's a CB transmission expansion plan labeled as a renewable development plan. The plan has multiple shortcomings. For example, there is no clarity on procurement. There is no proper financing plan, how much funding is needed, how is it financed. There is not a 1 megawatt of rooftop solar addition that is mentioned in the plan. So I am not sure how you can move to a 70% renewable electricity by eliminating rooftop solar. It has insufficient battery storage for the capacities that we are trying to build, and it's inconsistent with CB's generation plans. In addition to that, it's even not representing the current state of the grid accurately. For example, even though this went to the cabinet in January and came with approval in February, the plan says by 2025 December, there will be 100 megawatt battery storage system located in Colonnawa. Now, this tender did not go in 2025 January as per the plan. It went in December and it has still not been awarded. So, how can it be built by 2025 December? So, even this type of basic facts are being misrepresented in this plan.
Doctor, now looking at the plans regarding the three focus areas, do you agree the biggest constraint is actually grid readiness and system stability rather than land identification and renewable parks?
So land identification and renewable parks, Mahieash, are only relevant if you are going for large scale projects, which I think is going to be a challenge going forward, because we know we already have land use challenges because of the cyclone requiring some of the things that is in the mountains to be relocated in the plains. We also have a ever increasing human-elephant conflict, so looking at large tracts of land for renewable energy projects is going to be challenging. In terms of grid stability, I think the plan takes a very, very narrow view. They are only looking at synchronous condensers and battery storage, whereas some of the problems that came in 2025 blackout, which is the responsiveness of our hydro plants, especially Victoria, both Mahavali and Lakshapana complex, and incorrectly configured security systems, safety security systems, which caused the blackout. None of these are being addressed. even on the storage side, the plan relies on a 600 megawatt pump storage plant that is located in Bandaranayake, which is a highly landslide susceptible area, and which also requires $1 billion of funding to build. This is not going to come. So by relying on projects that are not feasible, we are not going to increase the grid stability and grid readiness for the renewable energy transition.
Absolutely, Dr. Zabel, that's a very clear answer. Now, finally, as an independent energy perspective, do you agree the report has shown a credible delivery timeline with measurable milestones from 2025 to 2030? And if not, what is a single missing indicator that makes you doubt it?
So Mahieash, it actually does not tell us how much of renewable energy, how much of solar, how much of wind, how much of battery storage is coming for each year. And as I mentioned, there is zero rooftop solar plan. What it only exclusively relies on is some large-scale renewable energy projects and a lot of transmission projects. That's why I mentioned that this looks like a transmission plan than a renewable energy development plan. And all of these large-scale projects have a lot more complexity than smaller-scale projects or rooftop solar projects, because they tend to, both from a procurement process as well as implementation process, tend to take quite a long time. I don't remember a single CB transmission expansion project which finished on time. So by relying on these mega scale projects with very challenging timelines and very unrealistic timelines, we are actually missing on the projects that can be much easily deployed to meet the timeline. Now, because the plan does not give year-on-year additions of total renewable energy capacity that needs to be added, as opposed to showing timelines for the large-scale projects, it is impossible to have accountability on delivery of the plan itself. So that, to me, is the simple missing piece in this plan.
All right, let's leave it at that. That was energy expert Dr. Vidhura Ralapanawa. Thank you very much. This is the State of the Nation. Back in a moment. Welcome back, everyone, to the State of the Nation. Tonight, the government is selling a new law as a shield for tenants, and already it's taking hit. In Parliament, the Protection of Occupants Bill 2025 is being talked about like a shockwave to the rental market. The opposition says this bill is already spooking investors. They claim that 3 foreign companies have left Sri Lanka because of it, and 8 local companies are preparing fundamental rights cases. Now, on top of that, parliamentarian Shamara Sampathdasanayake made another allegation. He said that families affected by Cyclone Ditwa in Badulla are struggling to find rental homes even after getting the government's 25,000 rupees rent support. The reason, well, he says owners are now reluctant to rent out. Now let's get to the part that makes landlords sit up straight. The penalties in this bill are not small talk. There are provisions linked to contempt of court, a fine of up to 500,000 rupees, or imprisonment up to 1 year, or both. It also blocks landlords from cutting essential supplies like water or electricity. And it limits what owners can do even while disputes are before courts. Now, the Justice Minister's message is basically this. If you're a high-handed landlord, worry. If you're not, then relax. He also says the public can still file objections and amendments can come later. But you and I know this confidence is not built on later. Confidence is built on clarity now. Now, here's the other side of this story that also needs attention, because the rental market has been running wild with prices in some areas, and penalty of people feel has crossed into unnecessary territory. A recent report tied to a property price index has been cited to suggest that Colombo is among the most expensive places for rentals and even for buying. And a lot of renters believe that the price surge is being pushed by the market itself, not by real reasons or indicators. They blame some real estate agents for jacking up prices just to cash in on foreigners looking for places in Colombo. Because foreigners pay in dollars, for them it still feels cheap. But for locals, you and I end up paying a dollar rate price in rupees. And the frustration is this: if there are no real markers showing the real reason why the costs are going up, why are the rents just going up unnecessarily? So yes, protecting tenants from abuse absolutely is essential, but also don't pretend the rental market is innocent either, because if policy is sloppy, landlords do take advantage. If the market is greedy, renters suffer. And in both cases, you and I are left holding the bills. Joining me now is former Justice Minister Ali Sabry, who has warned against this bill and that it could backfire on tenants as well. Well, thank you very much, sir, for taking the time to speak to me. What is your single clause in this draft that you believe must be removed or rewritten first?
Yeah, in my belief, this is basically a tenant-based kind of a law. But what you should do is only talk about the tenants' rights, but not the responsibilities. That has to be rewritten or removed, and an appropriate exception be brought, wherein tenant's responsibility that he must pay the rental, he must pay the utilities, he must pay the management fee, should be also come in. As long, because there cannot be protection without paying rental. So that's the basic law.
So I know, well, you're a practicing lawyer and also the former Justice Minister. So in your opinion, what needs to be tweaked to activate occupant protection during a dispute?
And I think basically those protections are already there. So Act number 1 of 2023 says that as long as you are in compliance with the lease agreement you have entered in, you cannot be ejected. So it further says that you can only be ejected without, through if there is a violation. If there is no violation, you cannot be ejected. In any event, in terms of the Primary Court Procedure Act, we normally call it as Section 66. If anyone has been removed within a period of 60 days, you can always go back to the magistrate court and get yourself back into the position. So that is faster than this. So all in all, I don't think this is very necessary. Even if it is necessary, it has to be coupled with both tenants' responsibility and landlord's responsibility, as well as their rights. So this is kind of a tenant's rights, tenant's privileges, sans his responsibilities primarily to the property, because he has to pay his rental, he has to pay take into account of a situation in a condominium property. If you do not pay for 3 months, and management corporation will cut your utility bills. In that kind of situation, what you are saying is the landlord could pay this and continue to have him in occupation at his cost.
Okay, former minister, now the current minister says not to worry, only the big renters should worry about this and not the small ones. Why don't you share the same sentiments?
No, Mahieash, once the law is being formed, you cannot say that it only applies to big rentals and not to small rentals. Law is across the board to everyone. You shouldn't see that in that way. We must promote commerce, contractual autonomy, and allow people to freely buy, invest on properties and lease. That's how market will stabilize. If you do not and allow people to rent it out, ultimately the tenant will suffer. Why? there will be less property on the market. People will ask for exorbitant sums as advance payments, so to secure themselves. And with that, rental will become either expensive or the properties are not in the market, and therefore it would be counterproductive also. I think in my note I have very clearly said that it is well intended, but basically could be better crafted. I'm sure government will look into this and do the needful so that it will not roll back. But I brought in as Justice Minister a long time ago, it is my cabinet paper which brought 1 of 2023, which is one of the most successful laws in the recent past, where people are now freely renting their property, knowing that if somebody try to be funny and try to violate it and be there in property for so many years, they cannot do that. Within 6 months, within 9 months, you are out. So I think that regime need to be protected. We are not in 1972, Mahieash. We are right now in 2026. These different times. So those 72 kind of protection no longer can exist.
Absolutely. All right. Understood. Let's leave it at that. That was the former Minister of Justice, Ali Sabry. Thank you so much. Well, this is the State of the Nation document. Welcome back everyone to the State of the Nation. Taking a look at the state of our world, well, tonight you and I are watching something big happen in real time. The world is quietly rewiring its trade. India and the European Union have now concluded negotiations on a landmark free trade agreement. Years of on and off talks, and suddenly it's done. That links a market of nearly 2 billion people. And this is not some ceremonial handshake for the cameras. This is about market access. This is about tariff cuts on a large share of goods. And it also serious geopolitical messaging. India and Europe choosing to look in closer right now. Now, here's the other elephant in the room. The United States. A lot of countries are trying to hedge their trade risk because tariff policies has become unpredictable and heavy under Donald J. Trump. Now, UNCTAD or UNCTAD has even pointed out that global tariffs rose in 2025, driven largely by measures introduced by the US. So yes, if you keep threatening everyone with tariffs, don't act surprised when they start building other routes and doing their family dinners without you. So what does this mean for the rest of the world? And more importantly, what does this mean for our South Asian neighborhood? Because when India plugs itself deeper into Europe, supply chains shift, standards shift, investment flows shift as well. And for countries around India, including you and me here in Sri Lanka, the real question is simple. Do we position ourselves to ride that new corridor? Or do we watch it fly past and then complain later that nobody gave us a chance? Well, joining me now here to discuss this is Deputy Head of Academic Affairs at the Bandaranayake Academy of Leadership and Public Policy, Dr. Anuradha. Rodrigo, thank you very much, Doctor, for taking the time and joining me on the program. Doctor, a global power perspective, is India-EU deal mainly economics, or is it a strategic signal that the world is moving towards multiple centers of influence, especially as trade ties with the US becomes more unpredictable?
Thanks for having me, Mahieash. Let me put it in this way, like the contemporary world order is, the way I look at it, is a little different to the contrary to what the most popular rhetoric and the most popular discourses and narrations are asserted. That what I believe is, like, especially in the neo-colonial global order is collapsing, especially after the Cold War, where that more than an integration, we are seeing a disintegration in the world order. As a result, that you are seeing with the collapse of the neo-colonial global order and the rule-based system which was created by America, now American hegemony has been threatened by certain other powers. So this is the real reason behind India entering into this EU agreement, or definitely it is not just a merely economic relationship or economic, it is something more than that, very strategic, in which that you can very well clearly see that we are entering into 2 billion population along with this deal. At the same time, we are opening avenues not only for the trade, but also for strategic, security, technological, many advancement as well. At the same time, you are completely removing 96% to 99% tariff of all the goods. And then again, we are not confining to goods alone, that we are expanding it to services as well. So this is entire what Modi wanted and asserted, especially strategic autonomy in India. At the same time, what he wanted to be a shape of global order, not a rule maker, but a rule shaper. So that's very obvious. It's not a merely an economic deal.
Doctor, now for South Asia, does this deal create a gravity pull towards India as the region's main gateway to EU, meaning neighbors like Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Nepal either plug into India's linked supply chains, or is being sidelined? And what smart moves can smaller economies make to stay relevant and to harness the benefits from this deal?
Yeah, definitely, like we cannot be sidelined by this. Especially, I always, I said, I'm an ardent advocate when it comes to Sri Lankan foreign policy. I always say that we have to be along with our strategic position with India, and then the South Indian position with the Indian composition, the Dravidians, and as a result, we cannot deviate from India when it comes to foreign policy movement, whether we are in a bipolarity or multipolarity or whatever it is. So we have to, again, in this context, in a multipolar movement where it is entirely not a clear multipolar movement, division is not clear, but then again, pretty much divided, where India has again paved the way for that uncertainty again in the multipolar world. So you have to be not sidelined with any power, but again to strengthen further and further Indian relationships, politically, economically, as well as through certain other powerful software approaches has to be taken. That's how I believe.
All right, let's leave it at that. That was Deputy Head of Academic Affairs at BALPP, Dr. Anuradha Rodrigo. Appreciate it. Thank you very much. A short break now. Be back with the closing. So here's what I want you to take into your week from the topics we discussed tonight. Don't get distracted by the noise. Look for what is real, what is measurable, what actually changes your life. Because in this country, the fastest thing is to sell is hope in speeches. The harder things is to deliver it in systems. And that's why you and I have to stay awake, not angry all the time, just awake. Ask better questions, demand clearer answers, and don't let loyalty or emotions do the thinking for you. Because when policies go wrong, it's never the powerful who feel it first. It's the ordinary you and me. So protect your mind, protect your money, and protect your ability to think straight. Because in Sri Lanka, the people who stop thinking start paying. Well, with that, we wrap up this edition of State of the Nation. Thank you very much for watching. Send us your comments to feedback.adncenglish@derana.lk or WhatsApp us your feedback on 076-805-7933. We'll be back again next week with more views you can trust and opinions you cannot ignore. Thank you very much for watching. See you then. Bye.